Today we're going to be talking about citing evidence with quoting. Our essential question is, how do I quote an author word for word in my writing? A lot of times when we are writing, we want to go through and be able to what we call cite evidence. We're going to need to be able to provide evidence about what the author said. Whenever we do that, it's called citing evidence. We're going to use the author's information to prove our point or to show that our answer is true or to just follow the instructions of an assignment. We're going to use the evidence that's given from the article, and that's called citing evidence. Now, if we are quoting, we are writing the evidence down word for word. When you quote, you write down exactly what the author said. If possible, sometimes you even just copy and paste over exactly what the author said. So you have every single word, every single capital letter, every single piece of punctuation. And then you put all of that inside of quotation marks. Those little bunny ears go around showing that. And when you put those bunny ears, what's that showing is these are not my words that I'm telling you right now. I'm not telling you what I think or how I would say it. This is exactly what the author said and how the author said it. So I'm putting these quotation marks around that to show you. Now, here are some sentence frames that we can use for quoting evidence. While discussing an event, the author or character argued, and then you put what was said inside the quote. So if you're writing about a story, you might refer to a character. If we're talking about an article, it's going to be the author. Either way, we're going to go through and talk about a little bit about what's going on, and then make sure we're giving credit to who's speaking. As recorded by blank in title, chapter, page, whatever, and then you give the quote. So sometimes if it's a novel, you might go through as recorded by the author in chapter 5. Then you give the quote. Something as simple as that. You just copy and paste it in. When referring to an event, the author noted, quote. So whatever the event, whoever the author was, you could just pop those into those little parentheses points and then finish out your sentence. Sometimes, though, you could just go with straightforward, especially on a longer quote. You might just give the quote and said, stated the author on page blank. Something along those lines. If it's a really short article and doesn't have pages, you might say in paragraph 5 or in paragraph 7. If it's really that short of an article, though, it's often better to go ahead and use one of the while discussing or as recorded by, or I'm sorry, when referring to. When talking about specific things on short articles and there aren't really enough pages to reference, it's good to go through and discuss what was going on in the article when they refer to it. Now, one thing to remember, when you write your evidence sentences, that's a great place to use transitions. Not every evidence sentence has to have a transition, but it definitely helps. It helps your writing to flow. So really think about putting those transitions in there. Here's a couple of example evidence sentences, just based off of these notes. To demonstrate, when discussing evidence, Mr. Holsworth stated, you write the evidence word for word as the author said it inside of quotation marks. I have a transition. I refer to what part of the notes or what part of the video we're talking about, and then what was written down word for word is copied in quotation marks. Moreover, the teacher stated, it is crucial that you cite your source of evidence. Here we didn't have nearly as much of some context giving information about what was said by Mr. Holzer, by myself, but it still has the quote word for word. And since it's just elaborating on what was already talked about, and I already have a good description of what we're referring to, we can kind of get away with that on the second evidence. So take a look at the sentence frames, take a look at these examples. When you're going through and writing out your evidence sentences, make sure that you're making a strong evidence sentence that has a good quote from the article that's going to help you prove your point.